Hi, I'm Antonia from Get Brindled. Get Brindled is a PR, social media, crisis management and marketing agency based in the Northeast. We look after clients from one-man bands all the way up to blue chip corporates on a range of needs to help promote, project them into their own marketplace, increase their footfall, increase their sales, and ultimately protect and build a solid reputation in their own marketplace. We've all faced uncertain times recently, and as a business, Get Brindled has been helping many organisations across the region to get themselves through these challenging, difficult times of the pandemic, putting themselves back into the marketplace, reaching out to new people, and helping them put strategies in place for the future, and generally just helping position people where they need to be, companies where they need to be, to ride out the storm that is the pandemic at the moment. Today I'm going to be talking to you about ethical PR and how you can attribute your own campaign to basically focusing on ethics and giving the right message and talking to the right people about the right things. PR has to work and it has to have a return on investment. There is no point in doing PR for PR's sake. So to have a strategy is really important, and within that strategy, the one thing that I work with all my clients very closely on is having those ethics in place. This is something that I've worked with university students on from Sunderland, and it's something that is very close to my own heart at Get Brindled. We look at the best ways to reach market, and when handling crisis management, the best way is the honest way. So let's start with what the word ethical means. What are ethics? They're basically moral principles that govern a person's behaviour or the conducting of an activity. That's the dictionary meaning anyway. But what about in everyday life? It's about doing and saying the right thing and acting in the right way. It's about not lying or covering up. It's about not exaggerating. It's about being honest. It's about being upfront, and it's about not trying to persuade opinion. It's about giving people information and allowing them to make their own decisions. Whatever service you offer, whatever product you sell, basically people will buy from you if they trust you. And ethics go a long way to ingraining that trust in your customer base. So as soon as you deviate from that path in your PR, you really are taking a path that will alienate people rather than endear them to you. So if we have a look at how PR and ethics fit together, it's really difficult. There are the whole reputation of Max Clifford, of Patsy and Medina. You Google PR and you look at the people within PR historically, and it's seen as the champagne swilling, people who will go to any lengths to spin a story. PR in 2020, especially with the advent of the pandemic, people have got wise to this. PR really needs to persuade opinions, but ethics is not about persuading opinions. So how do you do this? I think the best things for us to do is go through each tool and have a look at how that works within a PR strategy. So your communication tools are the media, newspapers, TV, radio, magazines, face-to-face, and more than ever this year, online. That might be Zooms, or might be webinars, or it might well be stories or videos, podcasts. The list is kind of endless, really. The written word is very powerful as well now online, websites, social media, blogs. All of these tools, especially this year, are being used to educate people. And that's where the ethics come in, and that's why people will buy from you or will employ your company. If you use your strong sense of ethics, the way that you would in your everyday life, to apply to your business principles, then people get that feeling about you. They feel the warmth, they feel the empathy, they feel the understanding, they see how hard you're working. They know you want the end result to be the same for them as for yourself. They know that you'll want to be a team member. And the end result every client asks me and wants to see increased sales, increased footfall, a bigger market share, an increased profile, people to know who I am, me to be the first place they come for help. You need that to be on an ethical basis. There is absolutely no point being the first name of a company in your industry that comes to mind if it's for all the wrong things. So build your strategy and look at all the right things. What are the things, if you were looking at another company, you would like about yourself, and use that as your basic ethics. Avoid manipulation and avoid fear. Do not enter into a PR campaign that makes people afraid to not have your product, your service. It should be built on a more agreeable approach, on a way that makes people look at what you're doing out of their own interest and actually think to themselves, I need this in my life. They then believe that this has been their decision to buy, it's their decision to engage, their decision to get you involved. Whatever you are portraying out there, if people see it and they have a decision to make, if they feel they've made that decision themselves rather than being sold to, then they're more likely to engage with you. And this really, really is important for the fit of ethical PR. So codes and guidelines for ethical PR are quite straightforward. There's the 3 Ps. They should always come in the right order. So it should be protect, project, and preserve. All practitioners now, all PR practitioners, should work by guidelines. Most of us are members of the CIPR. We have an NBSL code, RTC North if you're getting funding to help with your marketing and your PR. There's all codes of conduct that we have to sign. Check out anybody who you're working with signed up to these kind of bodies. Make sure that their client contract is up to scratch as well, and that you are covered and it's not all in their interests. Make sure you look at T's and C's and that you have a bona fide contract with any PR practitioner that is representing you. As part of what I do, I undertake to keep all sensitive and unpublished material, data and information confidential. GDPR is very, very important in ethical PR. We only contact people that we also have the permission to contact. That's incredibly important in everything that you do nowadays. And most good PR practitioners, in fact every PR practitioner, will be insured. It's always worth asking that question if you are thinking of employing a PR practitioner to represent your company. Just check what their insurance policies are. And NDAs are always a really good way of ensuring that ethics are adhered to and that your confidential information is secure. So if you're looking for a PR practitioner, how do you go about finding one that you can have a good relationship with? Every client has a right to retain their dignity. Every PR practitioner has a right to retain their dignity. Have high expectations. If you're looking for a PR practitioner, make sure your expectations are high. If you are a PR practitioner, you shouldn't be overselling. That's not ethical. Keep within your boundaries. Be honest about what you can do. There's no harm in being creative. Everyone wants to see a bit of creativity, but just stay within the realms of possibility. Possibilities can be creative. Possibilities can be reaching for the stars. But if you overpromise, all that's going to happen is you'll fall flat on your face and you will have a very, very disappointed client. So from a client base, if you're looking for a PR practitioner, look for chemistry. Look for someone who you get on with. Look for someone who you can trust, that you can be warts and all with. Look for someone who's not a lapdog. Look for someone who will stand up to you in times of you needing support and tell you what they believe is the best way and come with proactive ideas. But someone who will discuss things with you, who will take on board your needs, and will build a two-way street relationship with you to make sure that everything that happens is in the best interest of your company. Always stay professional with each other, and there will come times where if your PR practitioner is having to do crisis management for you, that you will have to tell them some uncomfortable things. So you really do need to make sure that that relationship is solid, and that you have utmost trust, that all of the correct paperwork is in place, and that you both have the same vision. Get that vision on paper. Get your strategies written. Get in there what is important to you. Get in there what ethics you need to follow. For example, you may have to abide by certain industry guidelines, particularly in the financial or the legal world. Make sure they're all up front, and make sure everybody is singing from the same song sheet to achieve what your company needs to achieve, but within the parameters that you have to set. Taking those relationships one step further, be you a PR practitioner or be you someone in-house who is doing your own PR, the next stage in being ethical and building relationships is with journalists. Everybody's seen all of the things in the media and on the media, how unpopular certain members of the media are, people like Freudian slip there, people like Piers Morgan, who are very outspoken and not always in the way that most people believe is right. So many journalists are losing their jobs and are coming into PR. They are seeing the world from the other side. Many PR practitioners are crossing the lines and going into journalism. The best bit of advice I can give you about building relationships with journalists is be honest with them, but be professional. There's no whining and dining anymore. People don't have time for that. Obviously, with the pandemic, we can't get out there and do that so much. Understand the journalist deadlines, know their styles, know how they need things written, but within that, stick to your own ethics. Keep your press releases neat, lack of exaggeration, make their lives easy, and they will use your copy. Provide them with fantastic photographs, and you're making their life easy. When it comes to crisis management, there are a number of tips that I'd be happy to share now. If a journalist has a story that they want to run on you and you're providing a statement, always provide it in writing, and always make sure that you use the words to use the statement in full when you email it over. The reason being is this will stop journalists from chopping a comment apart, which could twist the meaning. And within that, there's a whole question on where the ethics lie. There is the use of the Press Complaints Commission if you feel that a journalist has acted unethically towards you. But to try and avoid getting to that stage, it's always best to build your relationship with journalists. At the end of the day, they're people like us with jobs to do. If we can make their lives easier, most of the time, the majority of journalists will work with you to get the right story. Now, a huge part of PR at the moment is social media. The words social media and ethical, it's questionable whether they sit together at all in a single sentence. Many things that you think would actually come down to just being ethical, actually now, as the world of social media is progressing, are actually against the law. So it's a fine line whether you're acting as yourself or as an employee of a company. And if you are employed and you have your employment on your social media accounts, please make sure there is a disclaimer to say that these are your opinions and not those of the company. So ethics on social media. There's a fine line between free speech, between slander, between malicious communications. There are legal acts in place, such as the Malicious Communications Act, that protect people from you having robust but unfounded opinions. As a company that I represent, I would never take a client down the road of talking about politics online, talking about religion, talking about anything that's happening in the current world that isn't automatically synced with the service or the product that's offered. They're the sort of things to do on your own public arena if you're so disposed. But as an ethical social media campaign, I would not recommend these things for company social media. There's a case of a chef from a local restaurant, which has recently been in the paper, who was furloughed and then was eventually made redundant, who believes that he was forced out of the company and that they were going to do this regardless of the pandemic. He took to social media and spilt the entire conversations he'd had with every member of staff, his boss, and started tagging customers who were fans of his food. Now, was he justified? Were his actions ethical? Is it okay for him to have done that? That's something that really each individual has to decide. The way that the company responded, however, is where ethics really lie. So did they block what he was saying, or did they respond to him, and did they calmly diffuse the situation? No, this company created literally World War III with this chef online, which caused absolute mayhem, with customers chipping in, saying they were never visiting the restaurant again. And unfortunately, once those kind of things are out there, then it's very, very difficult to move away from them, because people will screenshot and it goes on to be shared elsewhere, and then word of mouth spreads. Really, there was a loss of dignity, and dignity there very much comes into ethical PR and ethical social media. So crisis management. At Get Brindled, we believe that if we build the reputation of a company, then it's only right that should the wheel come off, that we try to protect that reputation of the company. So the big question is, can handling a crisis ever be done ethically? And the simple answer to that is yes. So I'm employed to protect my clients and to look after their best interests. But for me, that doesn't mean hiding facts. That doesn't mean covering up or trying to dig them out of a hole, or trying to pretend something didn't happen, or to just protect the company. For me, it's about making sure that ongoing relationships can survive. It's about building bridges, and it's about learning from mistakes and telling people that you will put that right. My biggest advice when it comes to crisis management is be open, be transparent, and tell the truth. Tell people what you're going to do about what's gone wrong. Have conversations, open dialogue. Let people know that processes are in place to correct what's gone wrong, or more importantly, to make sure that they never happen again. If something has been your fault or your company's fault, then apologise. That's ethical, and it's easier to recover from as a company by making an apology and letting people know that you're doing everything in your power to make amends and to make sure it doesn't happen again. It's about rebuilding your reputation from that point. And a solid foundation of humble pie is a lot easier to rebuild than a shaky foundation of lies and cover-ups. A big part of PR, proactive PR, is looking for ways to raise your profile in the local community. And through recent years, sponsorship has been a very effectual way of doing that. So in more recent months, questions have come to light whether community investment is community investment, or is it a subtle form of bribery? And again, is that ethical? So my advice would be, which is to clients, always be careful with any media stories that follow any sponsorship or any community investment. Always make sure the positioning of that story comes from an ethical grounding. Don't try and come out of it as somebody who swept in on the white horse, or as somebody who saved the day, or as somebody that a company that has saved an organisation or a group of people. Always position it as a joint venture. Any financial sponsorships, position it as a joint effort to improve the local community. Position it as collaboration. Position it as managing local relationships, and look for nice, easy ways to get involved without it being political, without it being for the sake of PR, without it being to force your branding elsewhere. Make sure there is a match. There is absolutely little point, for example, in a company sponsoring an event that clearly they have nothing to do with other than wanting to reach the audience. So if that event isn't within your industry or isn't within the vertical industries that you work within, and you're just trying to expand reach, it comes across as fake and unethical. It comes across as trying to profiteer from that sponsorship. CSR should be from the heart. CSR should be to help local communities. There's plenty of times where with clients I've had these conversations and actually they've done the CSR for CSR's sake and not to get the PR out of the back of it. That's when CSR becomes ethical. So in summary, 2020 has been a year that none of us thought we would be facing. It's thrown huge challenges at PR practitioners and at companies and organisations trying to do PR, trying to market themselves and having to deal with crises they never thought they would be facing. The whole realm of ethics basically comes down to self-respect and down to respect for others. So in everything that you do in your marketing, in everything that you do in PR, bring it back to that. Dig deep and ask that question. Does this make me proud? Does this action make me proud? Does people who I know reading this make me proud? Do I want people to know I was responsible for this? Do I want to be involved in this? Am I comfortable with what I'm telling people, or is it just for the sake of the company and for the business? The history of PR itself is shaky. Ethics disappeared a long time ago, but have risen and risen and risen throughout the years. And now the majority of PR practitioners are highly ethical, and they do this to protect their clients and to protect their own reputations. Journalists have to be ethical. There are code of conducts. Stay within the realms, and if you're making yourself proud, then you're doing a good PR job for your company. So thank you for watching today. If anyone would like to get in touch and discuss any concerns they have over whether their own PR is ethical, or would like any more hints and tips, then please do get in touch. My email is Antonia@getbrindle.com, or you can visit getbrindle.com where all my details are on to contact. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook as Get Brindled, and I'm on Twitter as Antonia Brindle. Please do reach out if you have any questions, and I hope the rest of 2020 can go as well as possible for all of you. And remember, stay